Good morning. Welcome to Haven Tree Parent Podcast, where we get a chance to talk about something that's important to us and to you before the kids wake up.
Today, we are actually going to be talking about a more serious topic related to pregnancy, and that is talking about our miscarriage and how that impacted future pregnancies for us.
All right, so like she said, today we're going to be talking about our miscarriage and how it affected our future pregnancies and us.
Yeah. And I think it's something that's important to talk about. You know, it's something that, like, before you have a miscarriage, it doesn't feel like it's that very common. Like, it's something that you hear about, but it doesn't seem very common. And then once you have one, then lots of people reach out to you and say, like, hey, I had this happen to me too. You're not alone. Let me know if you want to talk, whatever. And you realize that it's actually very common. Certainly I think that if you have experienced one, it is important for you to reach out to other people and encourage them if it happens to them. But I also think, as we talk about pregnancy, as we are hopefully finishing up another successful pregnancy, presumably in, less than a month. It is also something that I think is just important to talk about, what our experience was like, and just kind of put it out there so that maybe it's something that can encourage other people too, because it is common and it's hard, and, lots of people, I think always when it happens, you're overwhelmed and shocked, and not expecting it. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it was definitely nothing I expected to be the case, because I think when it happened for us, we were at 11 weeks. So it was like we had just had...
I was actually going for my 13-week checkup.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump right to the story.
That's okay.
Still prepping the groundwork.
So when we were pregnant the very first time, we were not trying to get pregnant. It was a surprise, and we were thrilled and excited, and a little nervous because the baby was going to come before I finished nursing school, and so we were just trying to
we wanted to start a family next year, but
okay, we were 6 months earlier than we kind of intended to be.
Practice went too well.
Wow. And so we were pregnant, and so you went with me to the initial appointments. We had an early ultrasound, saw heartbeat, little peanut doing well, and then had a second appointment. Everything looked great. And we had decided to just kind of follow the conventional wisdom of waiting until you're in the second trimester to tell people. And so for us, that meant the second trimester fell pretty close to Father's Day. And so we thought, that'll be a cute, we'll be in, the second trimester. We can announce it on Father's Day. Josh is going to be a father, whatever. And so, we, had these big plans to do this, right? Mm-hmm. And science says, if you have an early ultrasound that is good and healthy, your risk of, and you see a healthy heartbeat, your risk of miscarriage also goes down. So I went to I think it was a 13-week checkup. It was on a Friday. And, the first two, the ultrasound had looked great. The first appointment had looked great. And so went to the appointment, no big deal. And the doctor got the Doppler heart monitor to listen for the first time and couldn't find a heartbeat. And she was like, don't worry too much. It's not a big deal. We can't always find it on the very first listen. But we will, go ahead and just do an ultrasound just to ease your mind. And, so I was like, well, I'm chubby anyway, so maybe that's not helping. And waited and waited and waited for the ultrasound, because obviously it wasn't scheduled, so they had to kind of fit me in. Go back for the ultrasound, and they do the ultrasound and said, it looks like the baby stopped growing about a week ago. There's no heartbeat, and we're really sorry. And so then they took me back to the exam room.
She brought tissues down here for you.
Took me back to the exam room, and the doctor came back in, and we talked a little bit more. She said, like, this happens a lot. These are your options, whatever. And it was really crappy to be alone for that. And it's part of the reason, so we kind of alluded to it in our last podcast, but it is part of the reason that then for Adri, I think you went with me to almost every appointment.
Right, yeah.
Because it just was unexpected. We should have been outside of the window of likely miscarriage. Mm-hmm. And it still happened. So then I drove to your work, and I feel like I probably parked before it even called.
Yeah, I don't even remember. I feel like I just found you in my work parking lot. I know that's not how it happened, because usually like that would not.
You
be
wouldn't
possible.
have like just walked out.
Yeah. So I'm like, that wouldn't have been possible. But yeah. I remember like you just coming to work, and I don't even know. You couldn't even tell me over the phone because you didn't want to, obviously. Yeah. This is a big deal. So like you called me over, like, meet me in the parking lot or whatever. I guess they're up. You meet me in the parking lot, and so I go out there, and I think I sort of heard some stress, but I didn't really understand like what was upsetting or whatever, or wasn't thinking like miscarriage.
Anything.
Like I wasn't ready for that. So, I can
we
probably
stood
still,
in the,
I guess
stood
if
in the
I tell you
lot.
the spot in the parking lot, I still park there every day. So
I
it's,
just stood and cried.
Yeah. I think probably everybody walking by, I was like, what's happening right now?
Yeah.
But whatever. No, that was definitely shocking to, know that you had to drive there the whole way and like get to where I was. Like, I think I was like, I'm gonna go in and say I'm leaving, and then we probably did, or at least I'll meet you at home or whatever at that point. So.
Yeah, and it was hard,
I don't know did you wait for me and I drove us home?
I have no idea.
I don't
really remember.
I know, that's like, I blacked it
like
all
the
out
rest
too.
of that was a blur. Yeah. So then we actually decided.
Not to discredit it, but it's just a shocking event that you're not expecting, like you said, like it's not something you planned on. We're doing fine. We were in a safety window or whatever outside of the danger zone. And, it was upsetting, know.
So then we decided to go ahead and share that we had a miscarriage after it happened, which kind of like was kind of a bitter thing, because it meant that we didn't get to share, like our month and a half of being excited, and only got to share like the bad news. And so one of the ways that like that did change our, choices after the fact is now we tell people early on that we're expecting, because we want to be able to share the good, and then maybe the bad if it happens, but to have to only share the bad was not something that we wanted to do again.
Yeah. Right. Just.
Excuse me.
Right. Only being able to share the bad makes it sort of like, a weird scenario. Like if you're just telling, I don't know, somebody you haven't talked to for a while, you're just telling them they got in a car crash or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not the best way to start off. They're like, hey, how are you? Well, I just crashed the car, So that's, definitely a hard way to approach it versus like somebody already knowing the positive side of like, well, we found out, 6 weeks ago we were pregnant, but now we have to tell you, we can't tell you that exciting part anymore. So.
And certainly, on the flip side of that, there is like everybody knows that you're pregnant, and then they don't always know that you had a miscarriage. And so then they ask how it's going.
Oh, right.
And you have to say like, we, lost pregnancy. So certainly I don't think that there's
there's a fine line.
Wrong, choice to make. I think it's very personal. Some people that have multiple miscarriages or are struggling with infertility choose not to share that.
Right. I think that's what people do, like announcements and like the big party stuff where like they try to do those bigger parties, showers and stuff to like make it more people aware. But you want to keep it close knit. Obviously, they're in the beginning months at least, I would say. So just, I don't know, your Miles May vary type of answer where it's like, be smart about how many people you want to know early on and how many people you want to share that with later. So
and I think conventional wisdom still is like wait till the second trimester to tell.
Right.
And that's not what we do anymore because of our experience. But certainly other people do that very differently, and that's okay too. So that has changed for us. I think after that, there's definitely a sense of like a distrust of your body, like this sense of like, even though like it happens and it happens frequently and it doesn't like, it's very rare that it's because of, personal choices or your body, it still feels like you must have done something wrong. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like when you experience that, it just, you sort of like feel betrayed, by your body, like how many hundreds of thousands of years have people been getting pregnant and not, like for the human race to survive, like pregnancy has to be like a biologically sound and normal thing to do. Like what is wrong with me, that I couldn't do it or I failed, and so that is, a huge, emotion, that I think is pretty common.
Right. And I think I saw that later on in our next pregnancy and continuing.
Yeah.
Because it was like, for the next one, she got probiotics or not probiotics. What's those medications? Those little gummies that you had taken.
The prenatal vitamins.
Prenatal vitamins and stuff, which I don't think you did for our first pregnancy. I think
we did, like once we found out we were pregnant. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but I think it was later than normal or something. I don't know what we did, but I feel like we didn't have as much vitamin care or focus.
So like for the first one, we didn't know that we were expecting, and so like once we found out we were pregnant, I started taking prenatal vitamins. But then, you start looking back and thinking like, oh my gosh, like is it because this baby didn't have prenatal vitamins from the very beginning? That's something, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
and you start looking for like what little thing did I do wrong?
I think I saw more that you were more focused on making sure you had those or were doing something. They
at least
showed up. They showed up to me. Maybe they were there the whole time, but.
There is a level of, so then with the next pregnancy, there's such a level of still feeling distrustful of your body, of, being compulsive almost about making sure you're doing everything right. And making sure that like, oh my gosh, I didn't get my, prenatal vitamin this morning. Like we're, like we've got to turn around and go home right now, And I think
that's why there was more focus on it in the next one. Cause I was like, oh, they weren't mentioned to me at first, and the first pregnancy,
there's just like a hyper awareness of all of those little details and, concerns about every little twinge and change, mm-hmm. and worrying that that's, an indicator of whatever.
Yeah.
So, I think, that is, I think the other thing that happened though, during that time is we had a really hard time deciding what to do. So, they recommended that we do a DNC, which is a procedure that they do when you've had a miscarriage, mm-hmm.
That
basically like induces your body to go into labor, too.
Which I remember going to do that, but again, like this whole event is almost blacked out in parts.
And
I remember going to that hospital. It was weirder hospital than the other ones.
Yeah,
it's like an outpatient clinic almost.
Yeah.
And
it's
you were on anesthetics or something because you woke up in a weird.
Oh, I woke up like hysterical.
Yeah.
Like crying, sobbing.
Yeah.
But before we even got to that point, like I was like, I want another ultrasound. Like I kind of had like this sense of denial of like maybe you just didn't see the heartbeat. Like maybe, and so we went to another OB, we explained like, this is what happened. I want to be sure. And so we went to another OB, another office, did another ultrasound. And then once, that ultrasound tech was like, yeah, there is no heartbeat.
Yeah.
Then we did go ahead and schedule the DNC. And there's a lot of like things that kind of come into play with that too, of like, during that, I feel like it was forever, and it was probably like 3 days between like the first ultrasound that we found out that news and then getting kind of like another ultrasound with somebody else. But like that whole time, like all you can think about is like, am I like, this is not suitable for children, I guess, conversation in general. But, like, do I have like, am I carrying around a dead baby? Like just sort of that, like, and like the kind of emotions that come with that of like, if I do a DNC, like what happens to the remains, like, and those are things that like doctors don't necessarily volunteer that information. And when you're trying to process like what happened, it's hard to ask those questions, and not feel like you're being gross or overly sensitive, or, you know what I mean? Like there's just a lot of weird emotions and thoughts, that you kind of have to like deal with and worry about. Or like if you don't do a DNC, and you start bleeding and miscarry naturally at home, do you like, what do you do then,
Right.
And obviously, at almost 13 weeks, a lot of miscarriages happen much sooner. And so there's not, evident remains. It just is like a lot of bleeding and a lot of like clotting and things. But at that stage of like, early second trimester, there is identifiable remains, so what do you, like, what do you do? Like how, and so like trying to just sort of grapple with that and wrap your head around that and ask those questions and, try not to like lose yourself in that process and verbalize those fears and worries, because those are things that nobody talks about,
Right.
is difficult and hard. And, you thought you were going to be like painting a nursery, and instead you're like, trying to address that. And it's hard,
Right.
it's
Yeah,
hard,
definitely.
and it is painful.
Definitely.
And I don't know. It's
no, and I know that was the sort of our story and like where we went with how our decisions in that process, and it was definitely like a weird place to be in, because like I said, it was unexpected. We were past that window of safety, or
it was supposed to
concern,
be. Yeah.
Where we thought we were safe, and I think it was hard for me because like I don't think I ever acted emotionally right away. Obviously I was sad in the moment and like was there to comfort her and take care of her, upsetness with the whole event. But like I think my initial response was like to be strong and take care of her in the best way that she needed and focus on her need for just understanding what was going on. And that was going to obviously help me get through it as well and just understand what I needed to with this process. But yeah, there was definitely a point, I think 2 months later.
Yeah, it was months.
Yeah.
So I had like a little pregnancy journal memory thing that I think your mom had bought, and like, like, when did you find out you were pregnant? And, you just write all the little cutesy things in about like the first time I felt you move, and, just like whatever that I had been doing. And I I don't remember what happened. You came across it or something.
Yeah, I think I read something that you had written down or whatever.
Yeah. And I found him upstairs in the bathroom just like sobbing. And it was like 2 months at least. I think 2 or 3 months later.
I don't know. With the DNC that happened, and then it was like, I don't know how long apart all of that stuff was.
Yeah, it was a long time later.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like flabbergasted. Like, what? Like, what are you, what's going on? You know?
Took me 2 months to break down what happened, you know? So.
And I think that that's the other thing that is really important to just kind of like point out is that, you know, husbands and wives experience and go through that very differently. Yeah. You know, I think it is very normal for husbands to feel like they have to be strong or they have to be supportive. And on the flip side of that, I think that wives feel...
Sorry, I'm laughing because I'm like, in 2 months from Kenzie's last day of treatment, I'm going to break down and be like, Kenzie's done.
Yeah. But like, I think wives feel like their husband doesn't care, you know, or is like removed from the situation sometimes, you know, and so that can create a lot of hurt too.
Because we're not in the moment because we're trying to be
strong
defensive and strong for you.
Yeah. And so...
And not be girly or whatever we think emotions are.
Yeah. And so to not see you grieve or to not see you, you know, go through that process with me, like makes me feel like you didn't care, didn't want the baby or whatever, you know. And so, and that's, you know, hard to and create a lot of, you know, long-term
because
emotional
in the moment, have you asked me,
resentment.
I'd be like, I don't know, I'm not upset. But then 2 months later, like, I know I'm upset because
right.
I just had this thought of like, you were really looking forward to being pregnant and having this baby.
Yeah.
And,
and even then, I think you, had it not been for the fact that I just happened upon you.
Yeah, you probably were still on it.
I would have not had any idea, you know.
Because it was like I came to you crying.
Right. You
remembered.
Hid in the bathroom.
Yeah.
You know, and so that too is just kind of...
Did I take too long? Or why did you come and look for me? I don't remember. So
I don't know. I think it had just been a while and we were like going to go somewhere or we were going to get dinner or something. And I just was like, where is he?
Yeah.
You know, and so, yeah, it was just like one of those random things. You know, and then we had lots of people that like, you know, brought us flowers and came in, you know, just did things for us. And some people were very helpful and encouraging. And then there were a few people that were not. And, you know, and it's hard to be gracious with other people who say foolish things when you're grieving. I can think of two in particular I'm not going to share, but, you know, that just like people are trying and they don't know what to say.
Yeah, because that's a weird situation that you don't find in, I don't know, too many people, I think. But you know, there is that select few that have had that scenario happen, and it's hard to process for
and then I think
other people.
The other thing that can happen that's really normal, but people don't really want to talk about, is the fact that there were two other women that were acquaintances that were due at the same time I was, who had healthy baby girls. And it was hard.
Yeah, because we still don't know if it was boy or girl that we were having, because we never made it to that point.
It was hard to see that, you know, and to see like them, you know, sharing like pregnancy pictures on social media and share pictures of their newborns and think like, I should be doing that right now too.
Oh yeah,
you know?
Definitely. So it still is a process that you're going through and grieving,
and even for months.
Yeah, because like you said, you get. I think we talked about it in the last podcast, where like you see the ladies at the doctor's appointments and you recognize the other pregnant lady, and you know,
for months
you're on the same track to be due at the same time. So it makes sense that your other friends were sort of,
you know, and you would never like say like, well, they shouldn't be sharing their joy, you know what I mean? And I would never begrudge them that, but it was still like, and for us, like we were pregnant again, you know, we were expecting Adri. You know, Adri was born 7 months. So we had probably just found out we were pregnant again. Yeah. Around our original due date. You know, but it still was like, you know, I'm having to start again. And you
are hitting these milestones with your own kid. Yeah. No, it makes sense. And that's an extra, an extra hit to the grieving process, I would think. And it's actually funny because for some reason I thought you were going to go biblical. And that makes me think of just the story with King Solomon, with the two ladies that were fighting over the baby, right? Where like the mom's baby died in its sleep, and she wanted the other lady's baby. Not that you wanted the other lady's baby, you wanted your baby, but some sort of like similar comparison to that, Right.
And it's hard, like it's hard to see, especially when it's something that you want so badly, and certainly. We had a miscarriage. We didn't struggle for years with infertility and multiple miscarriages and right. And I can only imagine like the magnitude of those feelings for, women that go through that. But there is kind of this weird thing of like feeling guilty about feeling jealous, and I don't know. It just is. It's a strange sort of storm of negative emotions,
Right.
And then, as we said, then the entire time with Adri, it was stressful and scary. And then technically, we had with Sai was a twin, and we found out very early on that only one of the twins survived, Sai.
Yeah.
And that's not something that we talk about a whole lot.
Yeah. I think we still have his baby picture where like it shows the two little, egg sacs or whatever, embryos, whatever you call them.
Yeah.
And it was just weird to see the empty one,
Yeah.
So.
Or and so, so like with, and in that case, like it's something that had already happened to us. And so we just chose to focus on
the healthy one. Yeah.
And that was kind of how we were able to move past that, and we didn't talk about that a whole lot.
Right. No.
So so that again was just kind of like, another moment to grieve, but we were thankful in that instance that we were able to just focus on, the baby Sai, that came, even though he was a menace for the first couple of years of his life.
He's great.
He is now. He's the sweetest boy in the world.
He lost his first tooth this week, so.
Yeah, I had to pull it out, and I do not like teeth, so.
I loosened it for her.
Uh-huh. But,
I couldn't get a good grip. My fingers are too big.
Anyway, do you have any other thoughts that you want to share?
I think we had everything. So I wasn't sure if we were going to talk about the Sai twin one or not. So no, I think that was mostly the points that we had for this one. So like, subscribe, follow, do all those things.
Pause a second.
Oh my goodness.
My goodness, you're just going to jump in.
Well, I was already talking.
I know, it's all right. So I
think your last thoughts.
I know. Yeah. Let me. So I think, it. Now I've lost my last thoughts.
Oh no!
It's rude.
I know.
You're gonna have to cut and edit this a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll do it. I've been getting good at it.
Good. I think ultimately, it is something that is awful that nobody wants to have to go through. But I think, we wanted to share our story and just talk about and kind of normalize the fact that like those emotions are okay, and those emotions are normal. And I think, like I said, some of those questions or feelings or worries are things that like I didn't want to talk about. And even now, like it's hard to talk about like, what some of those emotions or questions were, because they just feel so, I don't know, inappropriate to talk about almost, Well,
we've had so much more things happen since then as well. And that's also hard to like go back to like an early, before any of our kids.
Yeah.
Sort of conversation.
I know, like life before kids seems like, eons ago. But I do think that it, is something that we wanted to share as honestly and frankly as we could. So that if there's somebody else that's going through that, they can find some amount of comfort in that. And so we hope that, what we've shared has maybe helped someone. So certainly, if you know somebody that's going through something like that, we would love for you to share this with them. and just encourage them and love on them, and don't have particular expectations of how they're going to grieve, because it's going to be very different. But also be there, and be willing to hear their fears and their worries. Because I think that that's the biggest thing that for me, like I had so many fears or like feelings of guilt that I couldn't verbalize, and didn't feel like I had somebody that I could verbalize those to, and so that was difficult, so I would encourage you, if you know someone or love someone that's going through something similar, to be that sounding board and to just offer non-judgmental listening ear for whatever it is that they're going through.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, be encouraged, and know that they're just you're not the only ones, and that there is hope at the end of the tunnel, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, clearly, us 6 babies later,
right.
Just I think remembering too that it's not necessarily a for sure thing, like having miscarriage does not mean that you will never have kids.
Sure. I mean, no, look at all the options. Adoptions, what's the other thing that you can do? Surrogates and
adoption.
Yeah.
And there's so many, and that's, again, not to minimize, like there are so many people that just want their own baby.
Right.
I'm
not saying that either. Yeah.
But, but know that, like, I know that for us, like, when it happened, it felt like the end of the world. And we wanted a big family. And the very first pregnancy, we had a miscarriage. And it was like, it just felt like all of our dreams, we were never going to have kids, because we had a miscarriage, and that's not the case, and so, so we hope in that way too, like that's an encouragement to you that, now it seems like a long ago, and distant memory, I guess. So, yeah.
All right. Like, subscribe, follow, do all those things. Share this to those who need it. We'll see you on the next adventure.
Bye. Bye.